previous videos, we talked about PAN contract. It is commonly used for the construction project for the private sectors in Malaysia. In these videos, we're going to talk about PWD 203A contract. This is the standard form of contract used by the Public Work Departments of Malaysia, which is normally known as the Jabatan Kerja Raya (JKR). This standard form of contract is normally used for the government project throughout the Malaysia. Now let us look into details of this PWD form of contract. This form of contract appears in two versions, similar like the PAN contract. If only drawing and specifications are provided without the bill of quantity, it will be referred as PWD 203. In the existence of the bill of quantity, it will be 203A. This form of contract is extensively used for the public sectors or government projects. It is uncommon for the projects in the private sector. The reason being is this PWD form of contract is custom designed under the settings of the government project. The unique characteristics of this PWD form of contract will be discussed later. This form of contract is applicable both for buildings and civil engineering contracts. A majority of the risk has been transferred to the contractor. It may be seen as this form of contract is favored towards the government. By right, the government should always be on the winning side. However, the government has been on the losing side in a number of legal and contractual disputes. This means that in the case of the contractual disputes, if the contractors fulfill all his obligations, there is still chance of winning against the government, protecting the rights of the contractors. The uniqueness about this PWD form of contract is that it is used in conjunction with the accompanying standard administrative forms. This kind of form has been produced specifically for the use of the contract forms for administrative purpose. This form also enhances the obligations contained within the conditions of contracts. With the applications of this form of contract, you will need to also be familiar with those standard administrative forms. Another unique characteristic of this standard form of contract, it is that the contractors is allowed to claim for extensions for the contract period, especially under the circumstances deemed the government risk. That means if the government is responsible for the delay of the work, the contractor is allowed to claim for EOT, but the contractor is unable to claim for the loss and expenses due to the government responsibilities. In another word, the extension of time is allowed, but the extra claim is not allowed. One more thing about this form of contract, it is that there is no retention money being held from the payment. This is totally different from the PAN contract, where the employer are allowed to withhold a certain percentage of the payment in the case that the contractor does not properly deliver the work. This retention money can be used to rectify those defects or incomplete works. Since now the employer is the government, having total authority over the entire country, obviously government is not worried about the contractor running away from the project. If it is the responsibility of the contractor, no way that the contractor can run away from the government. With that, it is not necessary for the government to retain the payment for the rectification purposes. These are further explanations regarding the retention money, just for your informations. But you know that the retention money is not relevant to PWD Form of Contract. The conditions of the retention money appears in the other types of form of contract. It is basically an amount held back from the payment made under the construction contract, typically in the range of 5% of the amount certified to be paid to the contractor on an interim certificate. It is when the certificate is issued, the contractor is entitled for the progress claim. Among the payments of the claim, 5% of the amount will be retained. As the work progresses further, another 5% will be retained. That means the contractor is not being paid 100% for the works that he has done. The purpose of this retention money is to ensure that the contractor properly complete all the activities required of them under the contract. In the case that some undesired defects, or in the case that the work is not done in accordance to the requirement by the contract, the retention money can be used to rectify those. This retention money will eventually be returned to the contractor if everything is done nicely. It is normally released either at the practical completions or after the end of the defect notifications period. That means once confirmed, everything is done nicely by the contractor towards the end of the liability of the contractor, then the retention money will be returned to the contractor. As for PWD Form of Contract, the retention money is not relevant. There is one more thing. The contractor whose employment is terminated due to various issues normally will be blacklisted from undertaking the future government project. Therefore, if the contractor would like to acquire government project in future, the contractors need to deliver the work properly. Under the form of contract, there is no provisions for the contractor to determine his own employment with the government. That means the terminations, it will be from one side. The government will determine whether the contractor is to be terminated, and the contractor cannot terminate himself from the project without the consent of the government.